congregation itself was organized in 1837, about a year before the Indians left. Their first place they met was a log cabin about a half a mile from here, and then they built a frame church right north of here a little ways for a while. And then in 1850 they decided to build this one. It cost $1,600. The pastor gave his entire year's salary toward the building, which was $200. The rock came from the side of the mountain up here, and I think it took them about a year or so to build it. So it was built in 1850. It served as it was a Presbyterian church. This was all part of Walker County at that time, and it was called the Chickamauga Presbyterian Church. Well, as time passed on, it became Catoosa County, and Chickamauga had their own Presbyterian church, so they changed the name to Stone Church. So it was here about 13 years before the war came through. When the war came through, especially with the Battle of Ringgold Gap, the Confederates used it as a hospital. The floor is original, the benches are original, the lectern is all original. You'll notice that the benches are about a foot and a half, the backs, and about a foot and a half the seats, all one piece of pine, every one of them. So we feel very fortunate that all this is still together. The church was used as a Presbyterian church until 1820, and at that time everybody moved to Ringgold and they started their own Presbyterian church. So they sold this to the Methodist church. The Methodists kept it for about 3 years, trying to establish a church, and they failed. So they sold it, and a group of citizens bought it and formed appointed 3 men to appoint a trust. Well, they never got around to appointing the trust.
Quite a few years later, relatives were found, contacted, and through a series of quitclaim deeds, the Historical Society became the owners and turned it into a museum.
When the war went on south, well, the Union Army used this as a stable, and they turned the benches a little bit to make troughs, and now there's little notches all along where the horses kind of notch the wood trying to get the corn out of the corner. It's the same, seems like the same distance from the corner. When the Confederates were retreating back from the Battle of Ringgold Gap, they used this facility as a hospital. And the surgery table was here, and they cut off the arms and legs here and threw them out the window into a little cart. Well, see, this is still the original floor, and the blood stains have soaked into the boards, and we can't get them out. You can shine them all you want to, but it comes through. Back in the 1960s, when they were building I-75, they discovered an Indian village in the gap of the mountain. And the archaeologists spent 2 years excavating, and most of these things were taken to the archaeological warehouse down in Carrollton, and we went down and brought back quite a number. So most of them come from right around here, especially the gap of the mountain. We have pottery, we have tommyhawks, we have a number of arrowheads, some of them going back 2,000 or 3,000 years. Gap in the mountain provided a way through the mountains all the way from here to the east coast by way of what is now Atlanta, and the Indians were on to that, same as the people that built I-75. With all the construction going on here in Catoosa County, we're suddenly finding in some of these chert beds, we're digging up a strange rock and look at it and come to find out it's part of a coral reef. In talking to our geologist, it seems that many years ago, some 360 million years ago, Catoosa County was underwater, and it was down next to the equator. It was a shallow saltwater lagoon, complete with its own coral reef.